We're going to be ranking every game mode in Geoguessr based on the following conditions. Is it good for beginners? Is it good at a pro level? How well designed is it? Is it fun to play or watch? And it'll make more sense as we go along. And today is a little bit special because I am joined by Ryan, aka IC3P. How's it going?
It's going great. Hello. Thank you for having me, Luca. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be ranking some Geoguessr game modes today.
And I think starting off with the probably most popular one, at least in my opinion, no moving. I think it's just the perfect combination, especially if you're watching on YouTube, it's just the perfect combination of nothing too difficult, nothing too intense, fairly calm. I just think it's the overall best way to start playing.
I agree with that. And when it comes down to it, no moving is just like pure Geoguessr. If you're moving, and we'll probably get into this, you can just travel as long as you want, and you'll eventually find information and get a good guess. NMPZ, you just get one frame. It's a little bit of hit or miss, but no moving, you can look around, and it's great for YouTube. It's great for educational YouTube because a YouTuber can look around and say, oh yeah, this is there, that is here, and it's educational. People learn, and it's quick. Moving rounds, it can take a long time sometimes. No moving, it's just it can be as quick or as long as you want.
Definitely not to mention the RNG, which is involved in moving games, which we'll definitely get into very soon. I mean, I think in terms of placement, it's just pretty much all you can ask for. I can't really think of anything negative per se about it. I think it just has to go S tier. I mean, I think going into that was the most obvious placement out of all of these.
Yeah, it's going S tier, starting off here strong. It's a classic. It's been around since the beginning, even when there wasn't like game mode options even in the game. People just would play without moving, and it's just a classic. Has to go S in my opinion.
I think we should go with 2v2 next. Well, for this tier list, I could have done 2v2 moving, 2v2 no moving, 2v2 NMPZ, but I thought just to save space, I'll do them all in one. And is there anything you have to say about it? I'm sure there's quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like for those game modes, it's really just down to personal preference on what you and your teammate want to play. At the core of the game mode, they're all pretty much the same, but 2v2 has come a long way since release, and to be fair, it's a fairly new game mode. Hasn't been out for too long, maybe one of the newest on this list, but it started off with both guesses counting, so pretty much every single game, both you and your teammate would guess the exact same spot. That was the strategy, and there was no hedging involved. It was very I don't know, nobody really liked that, and Geoguessr luckily listened to the feedback of the community, which is a big W in my books, and now 2v2 is actually a pretty solid game mode. They added team names, they added a whole bunch of stuff that makes this a pretty strong contender on this tier list. Now, is it S tier? I don't believe so. I think there are better game modes. You know, when it comes down to regular duels in a 1v1 situation, it's a bit more competitive, and 2v2s are still good, but 1v1s are just better in my opinion, because in a 2v2 as well, there's usually one player that carries, or you know, because you're working together and one player knows and then just tells the other player where to go. Sometimes it's not the case, but a lot of times it is, and so in theory it's almost like a 1v1 anyways. And so I don't know what letter I would even give this. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, as you said, it definitely does remove some of the difficulty. Very difficult round, just split the guesses a bit, not too much damage, which you absolutely cannot do in most regular duels. I think it's definitely good, obviously, especially for people, especially just like in other games, very good for people who don't like playing the game on their own, find it stressful playing on their own. I know that is a big thing for many people, so it's definitely going to rank high, but I just think the game is more geared towards single player, but that's just my opinion. A, yeah, I think A is pretty good.
I would say A, strong A, maybe middle A, maybe even lower A. We'll see. We'll see what other game modes end up in that same tier. But 2v2 is great for like the social aspect because you could like, you know, invite a friend maybe to play with you, and it's just a great tool for that. So I think there are quite a few uses for the 2v2 system, but I do think A is good. I don't think it's quite an S tier pick, unfortunately.
Yeah, it might just never be. Geoguessr could make all the changes they want, but I think to its core, it's just a step below single player, just because of how the game works.
Agreed. Agreed.
We've been dealing with quite a few game modes now, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what on earth Trot is, but this actually refers to the single player game mode, the one where you have to collect stamps, I believe, and then travel around the world. I will say, I understand what Geoguessr is doing. They're trying to make something more mainstream, something more people can start off playing if you know nothing about Geoguessr, which is fair enough. But I just don't think this is the right approach. People are here to, like, if you're playing Geoguessr, you know what you're getting into, even if you're a beginner. So I think this kind of defeats the point of why people are even playing to begin with. And I just don't think it's very good, honestly. I'm sorry if that's quite disappointing, but I've played it a few times. I just don't think it's it. It just doesn't feel like Geoguessr.
Yeah, I agree. I did a series with this mode, and it lasted a whole 2 episodes. Was not a good series. It's just not a very good mode, for lack of a better word. And we are, you know, intermediate to expert level players here, myself and Luca. So I would be curious to hear, definitely. Like, yeah, definitely top 2 player in the game, right? But I would actually be very curious to hear what a beginner player has to say about this game.
That is a good point. Yeah, wow, I might try that.
Yeah, as you were saying though, like, I don't even think it's that good from a beginner standpoint, because you know, it's just not what Geoguessr is to the core. And the maps that are chosen on that game mode are, you know, like historical places, town squares, famous places, you know, and these are geared to the just first day player, essentially. So, you know, if some people like this mode, let us know in the comments section. But I don't know, I feel like this might be our first F tier mode.
Hopefully the last one, because, you know, it's not great putting stuff in this tier. But you know, there is potential. There's definitely potential if Geoguessr is willing. I don't know if this is the best use of time and money, but if, you know, if they want to try and improve it, I'll definitely not stop them. I know we talked a bit about it earlier, but let's go with moving. And fun fact, moving is actually one of the biggest reasons why I even play the game at all. I think it was in 2020-ish, the era where I first discovered, what's his name, Geoguessr. And I believe there were speedruns on Games Done Quick at that time with Blinky, I think it was, and a few other people. That was really cool to watch. And the reason I'm saying all of this is moving feels like its own thing. Like the difference between moving and no moving is drastically different. It's quite hard to say one is better than the other, because it just appeals to completely different people, in my opinion. Like, you have the people who just find it cool guessing in 5 seconds and being close, and you have the people who find it interesting to speedrun every game and always get a perfect score. Both, I think, are pretty valid. So I'm a bit unsure on where to rank this. Being one of the 3 main game modes, it definitely has to be good, but I just think no moving is just the overall more balanced mode, and moving, especially as time goes on, feels like the more niche way of playing.
These are the 2, like, the yin and the yang of Geoguessr. These are the 2 game modes. I think you're either a moving player or you're a no moving player. And as you were saying, Geoguessr also was what got me into this game, and he did a lot of moving, and well, still does. And moving is just, you need a whole different a skill set to play moving. You need to know place names. You need to know a whole bunch of other things that are not as important in no moving, because for the most part, you don't usually see too many signs when you're playing no moving, but in moving, that's all you're trying to go find. So it requires a different type of player. And I like a good moving game every once in a while. I can't say I'm the best at it, but I give it my all. And it's a classic staple of Geoguessr. Now, is it better than no moving? I don't say it is really tough. It is really tough. In my personal preference, I would say no, but I would still probably put it in S tier. I would still probably just right behind no moving. That's just me personally.
Yeah, I mean, there is to say it can be extremely entertaining to watch, especially if you have a really good player who just magically knows all this stuff out of nowhere. It can be very fun. I just don't think, the reason why I don't think it should be S tier is because pretty much everyone can play no moving. Like you pretty much never find a person who plays Geoguessr that doesn't play no moving. But on the other hand, a bunch of people will never ever move. So I think for that alone, it doesn't quite deserve S tier.
That is a good point. There's definitely more players in the game that play no moving than moving. So if you want to go off of like that, it's not as popular. It's not as popular as no moving. So I could be okay with putting it in the A tier.
And it's not going any lower, just being one of the 3 game modes. It can't be bad, obviously, but I think it also feels like over time, like a lot of beginners play moving. Like instead of the single player and map runner, which we'll get to later, I think just having moving, maybe assisted moving, if that makes any sense, I think that would be the best way for beginners to start playing. That's always how it's been. Yeah, so I think A is fine. Speaking of single player game modes, if you're a newer player, you would have never seen this before. But this backpack over here represents Map Runner, and our defunct game mode. And some of you may know, some of you may not, but this is actually the first video I made. Like the first 3, I believe, for all of Map Runner. So I definitely had to thank it for something, but in terms of how good it was as a game mode, it's quite debatable. But another thing, especially if you're a new player, you won't know this. There is Map Runner 1.0 and there's Map Runner 2.0. And 1.0 was significantly better than what we got later. If you want to see what it looks like, just watch my first video. There aren't too many videos out there of this, I promise. It was just simply way more challenging and felt like an actual game mode which you actually had to think about and to actually complete, because it wasn't free. Like, even though I wasn't very good at the game back then, I couldn't always complete it. But then 2.0 came along. If you've seen that Zigzag video called "This Game Mode is Broken," where he does it without even guessing, yeah, in my opinion, they kind of ruined it. That being said though, I can't put it in F, simply because of how good Map Runner 1.0 is, and I do think it's better. Despite it being way simpler, I do think it's better than what we have right now. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. And I actually didn't even know that there was a 1.0 and 2.0. I remember back, and I guess it was 1.0 because I failed a few times, but it was actually kind of challenging. I thought it was fairly fun, actually. And then yeah, 2.0 and Zigzag's video, and got way too easy. But now, I think, and I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but the Globetrot, the single player mode, is basically Map Runner 3.0 essentially. And so I don't know, I feel like Map Runner, when it was out, had potential. Had potential. I was hoping they would do like a speed run feature, like you can go head to head against another player and like race up the map, but that never happened, and they just gave up on the mode. All in all, I don't think it's F tier.
No, absolutely not.
I think it can have a case for even a C.
Actually, what I will say though, one difference that I remember is that in 2.0, like you only had a pool of 4 countries. You know, just to make an example of how much easier it was. Well, in 1.0 it could have been anywhere. But that's one of the few differences I remember. It definitely, as I said, it definitely did have a lot of potential, more than what we have now, which just feels very. I mean, there's only so much you can do with it without completely changing it. And I did hope they were going to make changes, but unfortunately, they did. But I don't think they were very good. I can't believe we haven't gone over this yet, but Duels, probably the biggest way people watch Geoguessr. What do we have to say about this one?
Right. I feel like every YouTuber has a road to whatever ELO, Road to Number 1 series going on here on YouTube. Everybody loves watching Duels, and for good reason. You know, the World Cup is built around Duels, and people want to play it themselves, so why not do it right here in the game of Geoguessr? Some people have, it's a kind of a controversial game mode in the way Geoguessr has done it recently, with all of their ELO changes and getting rid of seasons and all that stuff, but people still play. I know some players, they just only play Duels. They don't play anything else on the website, and other people stay far away from it. I don't know. People have their personal preferences, but at its core, a duel is competitive Geoguessr is probably the best way I can describe it. It's the best way to play competitive Geoguessr. There are other formats you can do, but there's a reason why it's in the World Cup. There's a reason why it's played at the top of the game. And so, from a casual player's perspective, playing Duels, they can do it as well, and they can play people of a similar skill level, and it's fun. So, I would say that this has to be pretty far up the tier list here. Has to be pretty far up.
It's pretty hard to imagine the game without Duels. I mean, just YouTube alone is just flooded with Duels. Yeah, I think it just can't go any. Despite, I mean, I think we have to say this. Despite all of the questionable decisions the devs have made over time regarding it, despite all of that, I still think it deserves S tier. That being said, though, it definitely can be improved, and a lot of it just involves looking back. Not necessarily, you don't have to do anything crazy, just simple changes would make it even better.
Agreed. If you look at the current state of the game and all the updates they've done to it, I think it's still an S tier pick, but it's definitely not perfect. Definitely could be some changes to it.
I mean, hopefully I reach champion by the time you're watching this. Hopefully those streams went well. But anyway, this lightning bolt, this represents the streaks game mode. Now you may be wondering, why is it even here? It's not really a game mode, but Geoguessr kind of technically classifies it as one, so I'm going to put it on the list. Now I'm going to say this now, the reason to why it's not that good is because we have scripts. We have Tamper Monkey scripts, we have Country Streaks scripts, which are just way better. For the simple reason, you can still region guess while also getting the correct country and getting streaks and getting records. As long as you know how to install a script and you're not playing on mobile, but I assume not too many people do, there's literally no reason to play this when you have access to scripts. Absolutely none. Unless you're trying to max out your profile or something.
Yeah, for context, in the streaks mode, when you click on a country, it just highlights the entire country, so you're not able to place your marker exactly where you think it is. And people don't like that. Also, I don't believe that you can play streaks on any map that you want. They have like a pre-selected group of maps that you have to choose from. So script's just better because you can do any map, you can region guess. It's just better in my opinion as well. So the only reason why you play this mode is to get like an achievement or like a badge on your profile, essentially. So I think this one's a bit lower on the tier list here.
Yeah, I don't think it's going in F tier because there's nothing technically wrong with it per se, and I guess for mobile players this is the best they have. I think C would be a fair placement. It's just kind of, I'd say for at least 90% of players, it's just not needed at all. So I'm going to put it in C tier. And if you don't know how to, and if you're playing on PC and don't know how to use scripts, check out this video. The Bullseye game mode. This one, as far as I remember, it's only found in the party section of the game. I personally, I have played it. It's been quite a while, so I can't really speak for it. So I'm going to let you talk about it.
All right, yeah, it's only found in the party game mode, I guess, the party section of Geoguessr. It's a great mode because I think it's actually the only co-op mode in the game right now. You actually work together to find the location. You can use circles, it gets smaller, and you can eventually 5k it. You know, you're trying to hit that bullseye. I think it's good. You know, there are ways to play cooperatively in the game, but it requires, you know, external services, essentially, you know, talking on Discord, doing like that kind of stuff. But the Bullseye is built right into Geoguessr, and I do like it. It's fun. You can play with other people, and it kind of creates a sense of community more so than any other game mode, which pretty much all the other ones are just going head to head against your opponents. So this one is not competitive at all because you're working together. I like it. You can play on any map. You can use any settings that you want. So there's a lot of customizability there. I think you go B for Bullseye here.
I agree. Yeah, as I said, I haven't seen too much of it. I've seen a few streams. I think Blinky was the main one who played this. It seemed pretty fun. And as I said, having a cooperative mode in the game is pretty fun. They could possibly do more, but for now, this is pretty much all we have. Yes, I think B tier is pretty fair. I know we just complained about the streaks mode in Geoguessr. This doesn't quite relate to the Battle Royale streaks game mode. It's actually pretty fun. I think this is also a fairly beginner friendly way of playing. That's a big way I see many people starting to play the game. It's duels, but a lot more forgiving. You have multiple guesses, you don't need to worry about region guessing. You've got a bit more time, you can see what other people guess. I think it's just, there's nothing bad about it, but if you're a good enough player eventually, you just kind of don't see any challenge in it because of all the outside assistance you get as well, not to mention the 50-50. So I think the best way to describe it, it's duels if you're not quite ready for them and are worried about elo.
I would agree with that. Yeah, back in the day when I was first starting, it's funny you mentioned it, I pretty much always played Battle Royale countries, which is why my stats on this game mode are quite trash. Because I was playing as a beginner and I would just play Battle Royale countries all day long. It was fun, you know, and you can see what other players are guessing. It helps you learn your flags. And, you know, it can get really intense, especially if you're one of the last two players alive and you basically have to lock in the 15 seconds at the beginning. It can be quite frantic trying to figure out what country that you are in that time. So Battle Royale countries, once you get to a pro level, it gets kind of boring because rounds can just go on almost infinitely until you get like one ridiculously hard round. But from a beginner's point of view, I think this is one of the most fun game modes that, you know, a beginner could play in the game, to be honest with you.
It was one of the first things I played as well, like back in school when it was the only time I played it. I was originally thinking B tier, but I'm starting to think, I think, actually, no, if this was 2 years ago with way more limited options, I'd consider A tier. But I think these days, I just don't see it quite as relevant anymore. Just because of just because of how much better people have become, the game has kind of shifted away from it and more towards regular duels. So I think,
I agree.
Yeah, I think B tier is fair. It could be A, again, as I said a couple of years ago, easy A, maybe even S tier. But I think for now, it would be B.
I think also it depends on who you ask for this one as well. If you ask us, we're thinking B. if you ask like a high level pro player, they might say F. If you ask a beginner, they might say S, you know. So this is kind of one of those game modes that it's maybe personal preference, which is why I think it's good just to give it a solid B here on this one.
Well, I think what we should mention, the biggest change is that now you don't gain any elo from it. Forgot, like you used to get, like they used to work like regular duels in terms of gaining points. So if you found duels too stressful, we could have done this. But if you're talking about Battle Royale countries, you have to talk about their counterpart, distance. On paper, this is a pretty good game mode. It's just regular duels, but you're against a lot of people. Unfortunately though, it's just not that great. And that is because of how it works. I have not played this in a very long time, but what I do remember, you have a certain amount of guesses which you can accumulate over time, I think. And you can change your guess as the round goes on. So it becomes this game of, I just don't think this game mode makes any sense the way it is. And I'm really not a huge fan of it at all.
I think this game in theory is good, but the issue I think is the map, because oftentimes when I'm playing, we get around in downtown Paris or like Singapore or Monaco or something, and then it's just every single player trying to get closer in Paris, and then one player who's just one street over is knocked out. It's not really fair. I think if the map was maybe big country, like a region guessing type of game mode where it was only big countries, it could be a bit better. But in the current state and how it's been for quite some time, it's really not good, especially for the high level player. Maybe a low level player would be good, but even not then, in my opinion. I don't think it's really made for anybody at this point. Needs some changes. I don't think this is getting high on this tier list at all. I don't even know if it's better than Trot, maybe, but it is not a good mode right now.
I mean, what also has to be said, I have not ever seen anyone else play this. I could be wrong, obviously, but I really cannot remember the last time it was.
When people had the seasons, when you were forced to play like 5 of these games, or maybe it was even 10 of these games per week, you would see like all the top players just complain because it's really just RNG. It's not really skill based at all. It's really just, you know, RNG, who's clicking where, and you could potentially lose a lot of elo back when this was a game mode that you could gain and lose elo with. So yeah,
I think it's quite I think even Geoguessr themselves know. I haven't seen an update to it ever, I think. Yeah, I'm quite indecisive between C or F tier. I think it has to go in F tier. As extreme as that may sound, if Geoguessr themselves don't make any changes to it, they must know that literally nobody plays it.
I think F tier is fair. Honestly, one of the fixes would just be to have only one guess. That would be a bit more skillful to only have one guess, but then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the game mode in theory. But I don't think anybody's going to be upset with us putting in an F, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that applies with many other things. Just a few simple changes may make it a bit better. But as it stands now, I just don't think it functions as a game mode. Probably, well, no, in fact, definitely one of the most popular ones, NMPZ. No moving, no panning, no zooming. It's weirdly I think it's kind of like moving, but on the other end. You have people that really like it, and you have people that will just never play it. But I think this is more about the difficulty of it, not necessarily the I don't want to play this game mode. I will say this, it's a very fun mode, but it's a very frustrating mode. But is this the mode that you play?
It is. I do play this game mode quite a bit. I do think that there's a lot of overlap between a no moving player and a no moving panning or zooming player. But there are some players out there who just play this game mode, and for good reason. It's definitely the most difficult. You only get one singular frame. And yeah, as you were saying, either you know it or you don't. And you know, you see a lot of people who have a ton of games split. If you go click on their profile, they might have, you know, 20, 30,000 plus games. And I would venture to guess that a lot of them are on NMPZ, because you can just spam these games essentially. I like it. I think it's a challenge to it. You know, if you know something that you see on your screen that someone else doesn't know, you have a big advantage. And so it definitely rewards that. But also, if there's nothing on your screen that neither player know, it's a lot of vibe guessing. It's a lot of just, you know, what do I think this is? What am I feeling out? And I personally like a good vibe guess. So I do love NMPZ. I do play it quite a lot, I would say. It's definitely one of my favorite game modes, because it's not a time commitment. You know, for a moving game, you have to sit down and you could be playing that same moving game for like 10-20 minutes. You know, for NMPZ, it may take you 10-20 seconds. So it's definitely something that I can see that people have a lot of enjoyment playing. It's pure in the fact that it's just one frame. It doesn't matter if you have bad internet. Your internet just has to load one singular frame, and I think pretty much any Wi-Fi can do that. So I think it's definitely a great game mode for really any skill level.
And I'm about to say a word which we somehow haven't said all day, and that word is meta. If you do not like meta, Google cars, I don't know, random blurs, all this other stuff, NMPZ is definitely the game mode for you. Even though it doesn't completely eliminate it, it's definitely the mode that does it the best, especially when talking about the car. And it's also very fun to watch, simply because of how difficult it is. Even good players will not always guess correctly, while in moving, and even no moving, especially these days, it's quite rare to go completely in the wrong location. But that definitely does happen a lot in NMPZ still.
Yeah, we saw that in the World Cup. We saw moving games, not really too many blunders. Very, very few blunders. NMPZ is a blunder almost every game, you know? So it's definitely more exciting to watch from a pro level. From a beginner's level, you could see some very long lines for people, from players that are just guessing on the opposite side of the country, which also can be fun. You know, it can be fun because if you do get that guess correct, then it's gonna feel very good. You're gonna feel very rewarded. That dopamine hit is gonna rush in. And as you were saying, I'm not a big card meta fan. I mean, you gotta learn it if you want to get good at the game. But NMPZ, especially if you play on a lot of the community maps, the panning is panned upwards a little bit, so you can't see the car at all, which I like. So yeah, I think it's important to take that into consideration, because it's the only game mode really that you don't get car meta in consistently. So I like that about that.
I think for all those reasons, I think the problem with no moving is that one big negative of it is that it can just take a long time. Like a lot of people don't want to spend so much time on a round, but with NMPZ, it's quite rare that you're going to spend more than 10 seconds on it. And I think more people are willing to do that instead of bothering to learn how to play moving. So I think it does deserve to go a tier higher. I don't think it's as good as no moving, because no moving is just like the default, it's just good for everyone game mode. But NMPZ is I think as time goes on, as people get better, NMPZ will be even more appreciated. So I think it just has to go in the S tier.
I agree. I don't think it's better than no moving. I think it's great. And if you tell anybody who doesn't play Geoguessr, like, hey, I know this location based off this one singular frame, they think you're just the best player in the world. So I love that about NMPZ. I think it's S tier.
Yeah, I guess bonus points for being able to show off on it. And we are left with one more quote-unquote game mode. And the reason I put it on here is because I think there could be quite a few things to say. We're not going to go into too much detail now, but I think there are quite a few things to say regarding, is it fun to watch? What stuff could they do to improve it? and how much does it actually help Geoguessr grow? The biggest critique I see about it, which I do think is pretty valid, is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I'm not too up to date on it, is the round limit. The round limit of 10 and the HP of 10,000, is it?
It's still 6,000.
6,000.
But they have like insanely high multipliers that kick off in round 2 by 0.5, and so by round 10, I think it's like a 6.5x multiplier, or it's something around there. It's very high. But yes, round 10 is the last round of every game.
And the issue with this, I mean, this also applies to regular duels, but this isn't regular duels. This is the World Cup for a lot of money. And in my opinion, it just doesn't feel right that a guess on round 1 means way less than a guess on round 10 when you're competing for a lot of money. Especially if you already have a round limit. I think what would make a lot more sense is that every guess should count equally. It should literally just be who's better at guessing on average. And when you have all these multipliers, it just doesn't really achieve that goal.
Right, and when you have this high level player, like these are the best players in the entire world playing these games, you're not going to see too many bad guesses. The only time we really see it, as we said, is in the NMPZ games. So what you gotta do if you don't have any multipliers is you gotta lower that HP down a little bit, you know, lower it to maybe 3,000. I don't know what the sweet spot is. I guess this is like a kind of a large debate, but when it comes from a viewing perspective, when it comes from a playing perspective, the multipliers definitely don't seem super fair. But when it comes to a spectator point of view, the multipliers do add quite a bit of excitement. It makes the later rounds just more exciting to watch because anybody can just come back and win, which is not good if you're playing. But maybe it's better for watching. So I don't know. It's a very like fine balance that Geoguessr has to like try to figure out, because I do think it is more exciting to watch, and you want people to watch the World Cup, right? But you also want to be fair for the competitors. So Geoguessr isn't a weird sort of place, because it's really the only game that I can think of when it comes to like esports that they have to, you know, make the rules about it. You know, most games are just like, you know, your 5v5 shooters, you know, you just eliminate the other team. There's nothing much to it when it comes to rules being controversial. But in Geoguessr, the rules are very controversial. And some people think, you know, the World Cup game mode right now is good. Others, I would say a lot of people, especially the players, think that they're bad. So especially because, you know, they also do 2 moving games, 2 no moving games, and then an NMPZ is a game 5. There's actually no guaranteed NMPZ game at all in the World Cup. The only way you play NMPZ is if it's 1-1 in a best of 3 or 2-2 in a best of 5, which is kind of crazy, especially if you're an NMPZ main. If that's your main game mode, you're gonna really struggle in the World Cup. So there's a lot of issues in my opinion about it. I don't know how to fix it though. You know, I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, but that's definitely the biggest problem. As I said, I assume. Ooh, I hit my mic. Yeah. As you said, I assume the reason to why it works the way it is for the spectators, especially the live audience. That's another thing we haven't mentioned. The live audience, if you're there, it's probably a lot more exciting to watch from the multiplayers. It's a lot more exciting to watch with the multipliers. But yeah, as a player competing for money, I just don't think it's the best system.
Right, and I don't have the experience. I've never played in the World Cup. I was at the previous World Cup though in Stockholm, so I was there, and I kind of agree that what Lucas said is correct. It definitely was very, very exciting, especially when you have like someone just get an insanely fast 5K. It's like, how do they just do that? And it is very exciting to watch. So I don't think there's really an issue with watching the World Cup. It's just playing the World Cup, and I don't think that any player would disagree with that comment.
But of course, hasn't been out for very long. Geoguessr is still very new to the whole esports thing. We can only hope that they will improve it over time. But now we need to talk about where does it go in the tier list, as it's not really a game mode.
Right. I mean, if we were to create these same settings that is played in the World Cup in like a party, is that how we're rating this, or what are we rating this on? Are we rating this as like a player's point of view or a spectator point of view?
Well, as I said in the okay, never mind. Okay, as I said in the intro, the rules are. We need to pull up the rules. Just give me 1 second. To reiterate the rules, is it good for beginners? Is it good at a pro level? How well designed is it? And is it fun to play and watch? So.
Okay. Well, I feel like it's fun to watch. The last thing you said is true. I would maybe even put it in S tier if it was just based on that rank alone. But everything else you said, is it good for beginners? Debatable. Is it good for pros? I could say no. As from a player's perspective, I could say no. Is it good for beginners? No beginner is gonna play in the World Cup, so it's not really applicable.
Well, no, I mean, I think I saw this somewhere. The reason that they always begin with moving games is so that beginners can follow along a bit more. Because if it was just NMPZ, beginners would have no idea would not have too big of an idea of what's going on. Everything is too fast. But at least with moving, they can follow along a bit more and maybe even participate in some of the guessing. Well, virtually, obviously. I could be wrong, but I think that is a solid reason to why they seem to be continuously promoting moving over other game modes for no other apparent reason.
Yeah, that would make sense. I'm sure Geoguessr has tested a ton of different formats and, play tested everything just to find that perfect game mode. And I guess this is what they landed on. So I suppose we trust that process. And from a beginner's point of view, like, my parents who never watched Geoguessr was watching the World Cup, and they said that they were, really enthusiastic about it. They were like cheering for different players, and they don't really know what's going on, but they were able to follow the World Cup, and these are my old parents who struggle with technology and stuff. So they were able to follow along, which I think is important to note.
I mean, I think overall it's good. Like, it's an obvious net benefit for the game overall. I think it just has to go in A tier. S tier would mean that's perfect, which it obviously isn't, but they put a lot of work into it, a lot of money into it, presumably, and it's overall a positive thing for the game. So I think I think A tier is a fair placement.
Yeah, A tier is good. Definitely promotes the game, gets more people in to watch our YouTube videos. So I think it's a good solid A tier. Yeah.
And that is going to be the final list. Let me know if you all agree. Thank you, Ryan, for being on the channel to help me out with this one. It was very needed.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And hopefully you all enjoyed watching. And that is going to be it for today. Thank you so much to Ryan, aka ICVP, for appearing on the channel with me. Shout out to my channel members Geomalon and Ground Jordan, and to everyone else watching as well. See you soon.